general manager at Foppiano Winery, which has been around for a very long time. In fact, it's an iconic brand of Russian River Valley and Sonoma County. And you may have noticed the title of our show today.
Nice.
Mumm's the word.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
I'm sure you have.
Having worked at Mumm for 15 years, yeah.
Yeah, so Rob was at Mumm for 15 years. That's where he got his start in the wine industry. And I thought we should start out with the sparkling. Oh, and I'm sorry.
I love it.
I'm so sorry. And I would like to introduce...
Oh, brand new.
I would like to introduce our industry analyst, Jacques Brix. I'm sorry, I was so excited about Rob being here. I forgot about you, Jacques.
I thought it was the bubbles.
Sure.
I haven't had anything to drink yet, even.
We didn't even rehearse this, did we?
Absolutely not.
Yes, the
right.
esteemed Jacques Brix is here to analyze things along the
And
way.
drink it.
And drink. So, shall we start with? So Rob,
All right.
Rob, you were at Mumm for 15 years.
Yeah. So my role is general manager at Foppiano, and I come from the winemaking and operations side of the business, and the majority of my career has been with sparkling wine, which has included 15 years at Mumm Napa, overseeing the winemaking operations there. And so I came to Foppiano in 2017. And I was pretty excited to make some bubbly for these guys. And
So are you like a consulting winemaker on the sparkling side,
no,
or just
you know what happened was, okay, so I had this sparkling wine experience, and then I teamed up with Nova Perel, our winemaker, and Paul Foppiano, who's our president and vineyard manager, and the three of us teamed up and made 3 different flavors in 2017. And coincidentally, last week we disgorged 100 cases of rosé and 125 cases of this sparkling Russian River Pinot Noir red wine, which is completely unique,
wow.
which I thought would be fun.
You excited? I
Would be
know.
fun
Yeah.
because
Thank you so much.
they do make red sparklings throughout the world. They're not as common. I know a lot of people have heard of the Shiraz, the sparkling Shiraz that they make in Australia.
Yeah.
And do you have a flute there?
You'll find him.
And there's the Rhone Valley also, that's Saumur.
Yeah.
No, the Rhone
So-
Valley, the Loire Valley has mixed up.
So Foppiano, all of our grapes, all the wine that we make at Foppiano is from our estate vineyards. And we have 120 acres planted, and we have a fair amount of Russian River Pinot Noir on the ranch. So why not make a sparkling? Let me give you a little bit more.
What a great idea.
Yeah, so this was just disgorged last week, so we haven't labeled it
excited.
yet. And this is the first bottle we've opened since disgorging. So this is kind of exciting.
Have you made a sparkling Pinot before?
We have.
I mean, have you personally?
We made a little bit over at Mumm Napa.
Oh, did you? I was wondering that.
So it was made a little differently, but it was pretty much the same. And so,
Wow, this looks delicious.
anyway, cheers.
Cheers,
So
thank
let's
you
open
for
it.
being
This
here.
is really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that. That's
So
Cheers,
we're
Jacques.
planning on releasing this wine during the Thanksgiving holidays because Pinot Noir goes great with turkey and cranberry sauce. So
Oh my gosh, this is so good.
cheers.
It is so
It
good.
tastes like there's creme de cassé in it or
There's a
something.
lot
Oh my
of
gosh, if
cranberry.
I were you, I would consider getting on the release list for this. It's
didn't
delicious.
make
This is
lot,
fun.
though,
It's
right?
going to get better. I mean, this was just disgorged last week.
So
normally
this
you-
is worst case scenario,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
No, but after you disgorge sparkling wine, just like still wine, it goes through bottle shock, and you've got a lot of fruit. But what's going to happen is the fruit and the dosage is going to meld more over the next 6, 7, 8 weeks, and the finish is going to smooth out more and become longer.
I think people would enjoy this. Could you give a really just brief description of how sparkling is made? I know it's more complicated than that. But
Sure.
Some people don't understand how the bubbles are in the wine and that type of thing.
Okay, so sparkling wine, this is Method Champenoise, which we call Method Traditionnelle. And so we are copying the champagne practices of France. And champagne is the gold standard of sparkling wine in the world. And the 2 main differences at harvest is that you've got, as you compare still wine to sparkling wine, is that you pick the grapes earlier. So we're picking the grapes at 19% sugar. and then
And for a still wine, we pick normally
you pick
around
up versus
24 Brix, so it's
and the
less
reason
sugar.
being is that we're trying to make an 11% alcohol-based wine that's going to be turned into sparkling wine later with a secondary fermentation in the individual bottles, where we trap the carbonation from that fermentation. And you have to think ahead and know that that secondary fermentation in the bottle is going to raise the alcohol another 1.4%.
Right.
So you want your finished sparkling wine to be 12.5, 12.6, 12.7. So that's the first big difference. The second one, too, is that you have to be super gentle with the Pinot Noir, Chardonnay that you bring in and to extract the juice from the center of the berry. So Pinot Noir wants to make a red wine, but we want to make a golden, complex, wine, sparkling wine. And to do that, you have to separate the juice from the center of the berry from the juice next to the skins where all the red wine components are. Therefore, when you pick the grapes, you gently handle the whole clusters of grapes to the winery. So you pick in picking bins and fill them up only 2/3 of the way. So
So the whole picking process is completely different.
you don't load into 2-ton gondolas, and you don't use, you have to hand pick only. You don't use machine picking.
Which means it's a more expensive.
It's more expensive.
Process.
Sure. And then you dump the whole clusters directly into the press. You don't go through a crusher destemmer, which will macerate the skins with the juice. And so you do all that, and then you have a gentle press program, so you minimize the rotations. And if you do all that, then you can extract the first 120 gallons of juice out of a potential 160 per ton of grapes. And that's your prime cut that you cull aside, have your own separate fermentations, and that makes good quality sparkling
Right.
wine.
So basically, you're saying that you use the free run. So when we start pressing something, the higher quality is going to be the first free run that comes
Exactly.
out.
So two main differences. Again, it's just picking the grapes early and then gently handling the grapes all the way until you get that juice before you inoculate with yeast for that first fermentation. If you do those two things correctly, you've probably accomplished 2/3 of your potential quality for sparkling wine.
And what year is this?
This is a 2017. So then the other key for making great sparkling wine and why champagne and this method traditionnel is a great way to make bubbly is because if you do the secondary fermentation in each individual bottle, that allows an aging program, and you can just lay these bottles away for a couple of years and let the yeast release their stuff into the wine, which adds another layer of complexity to go with the fruit, and the wine becomes smoother and creamier in texture.
Well, and that's
So-
why it's truly a program. So when you're doing sparkling wine, it's a whole program, and you're looking years out.
Yeah.
At,
yeah.
at
It's a
That's
2-3
fascinating.
year commitment. I mean, this is 17, so this is a 3-year process for this sparkling Pinot Noir. But I'm pretty excited about it because I think
Yeah, it's
I think it's
delicious.
showing really good
And I really
fruit
get
flavors.
that crème de cassis,
Yeah, yeah.
that, wow.
Yeah.
The first time I understood a little bit what was going on when you make sparkling was I went tasting the base wine in Portland. It was a big conference on.
I think I went to that
And
conference
I think we
maybe
might have
3 or
been
4
with-
years ago.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And I remember the tasting was at 4 p.m. and I was with a friend of ours here, Gérard Rotier.
Yeah, I was at
And
that
he,
one.
and he said, oh, great, 4 p.m., that's cocktail hour, right? And there were 6 base wine. I've never tasted wine so acidic in my life. It was undrinkable. And from that, the winemakers, got to decide what's going to happen to it.
Yeah, and when you're
Yeah,
working
it's so difficult.
And when you're working for a big sparkling wine house, and I've been exposed to a couple of those in my career, you'll sit down and you'll have maybe up to 100 wines
Yeah, I can
that you have to
imagine.
taste through and figure out which ones are going to the reserve and which ones going to the rosé, etc. And you're definitely brushing with Sensodyne toothpaste by the end of the week because you get sensitive. But at the same time, it's very rewarding because there's been a lot of work that begins, usually for sparkling wine, you're picking in August and finishing in September, versus still wine, which is starting in September, finishing on the back end of October
Yeah,
or
hopefully
early
by
November.
Halloween.
Yeah, yeah.
So now you
So-
have the base wine, right? And then you put the wine in bottles then?
Yeah, which we did at Foppiano, and a couple of years ago, and then now what's nice is there are a couple mobile sparkling wine disgorging companies, and there's one that really good who visited us last week.
Which helps the winery not have to purchase the equipment.
It
So
does, because
it's
it's
the
very
whole point.
specialized. Yeah.
Wow, that's really
So Foppiano, I mean, we're located on the northern tip of the Russian River Valley, and we're most known for our Petit Syrah, but we make some nice Pinot Noir, and this is a sparkling version of it. So those are the two most widely planted grapes on our ranch, is Petit Syrah and the Pinot Noir. Yeah,
well. This is absolutely delicious,
thank you.
That
isn't it?
It's-
I'm going to have
That's
some.
fun.
I'm
Yeah,
already
probably done
planning on
for
having
delicious.
it at Thanksgiving. It's the perfect
Yeah, you
Thanksgiving
will,
wine,
you will.
especially those.
Yeah, I remember
back
having
from
the Shiraz,
Right.
from some of our friends here.
Yeah.
And it was not as perfumey. It didn't have that beautiful strawberry, cassis, whatever. That's beautiful.
So
That's
we
nice.
made 250 cases of this wine, and we disgorged half of it for this year. So we're going to give the other half another year on the yeast to disgorge
Did you
next
say
year.
250?
Cases, yeah.
Wow.
We made 100 cases of the rosé that we're going to release around Christmas time.
That is
for the
not
New
very.
Year's.
That's low quantity.
And it's in time for our 125th anniversary. So Foppiano next year will have been owned and run by the Foppiano family for 125 years, and that's just when this bubbly's coming out. So it's a nice.
Oh
Very
yeah.
cool.
It's-
Well,
it-
and actually, as
yeah,
far as
it's
as far
nice.
as we're concerned, you
Yeah.
really only have 124 cases now. So,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
this is absolutely delicious.
We also made some Blanc de Blanc too.
Nice.
Yeah, 17.
Very nice.
So
That was
anyway,
from
it's
your
fun.
grapes?
Yeah, some
Chardonnay?
Chardonnay on the ranch. Yeah.
Do you want to try a little bit of the Sauvignon Blanc while we discuss
Yes,
the?
and
We can
you
come back
need
to this
the
later.
corkscrew
Oh,
for
we'll
that?
come back to. I'm
No,
not.
you know,
Nothing.
we don't.
Corkscrew
That's
for that? But no.
here. I can open this.
It was supposed
So,
to be a joke, and nobody's listening to my jokes anymore.
Sorry. I'm happy that I remembered you were sitting over there.
Thanks, Susie.
Here you go.
Oh, well.
Okay, this is a 2019
Yes.
Russian River Valley Sauvignon Blanc. I'll pour a little bit for
Yeah,
myself.
I'll get Jacques. Yeah, this is our 2019, and it's sporting our new label that we are just starting to hit the shelves. We've gone to a more retro look, and what's cool about this wine is that these vines were planted in the early 70s, and Nova, our winemaker, who came from Dry Creek Vineyards up in the Dry Creek Valley, they had an old Sauvignon Blanc vineyard, and I think that vineyard has gone away. And he thinks this is the oldest Sauvignon Blanc vineyard in Sonoma
In Sonoma
County.
County, I would believe that.
If it's not the oldest, it's going to be the top 2 or 3. But so these are Sauvignon Blanc vines from the early 70s. That makes them 48, 49 years
Yeah.
old. We
Wow.
have 2 blocks. They're planted in opposite row directions. So we have a north-south and an east-west. And same old clone, same rootstock, but the different row orientation gives them slightly different flavors. So one's going to be a little more of the green notes. The other one's going to be a little more of the riper melony notes. You put them together and you get a little bit of everything.
Because and what Rob's talking about is the sun exposure that
Exactly.
the vines are getting based on where they're planted. Wow, this has a lot of melon.
Yeah, that's
Very,
what I was
very
going to say. A lot
nice.
of melon there.
Sort of
beautiful.
green
But
apple.
A little bit of the grapefruit.
But
Not-
a little bit.
not
It doesn't
really.
have
No.
a lot of grapefruit,
No,
which I
it's
don't
more-
mind, but it's got some citrus notes, and it's got
No,
a little bit
it's-
of the green, kind of grassy character that you get
And
from
it's
Sauvignon.
soft also versus some of the New Zealand that are so aggressive.
Well, it's more
This
like
is-
fresh cut hay, like that type of. It's pretty.
Yeah, it's
I
lovely.
Love this.
Nova, what he does is he puts about 10% of this in neutral oak for least contact, which adds a little texture to the wine. But it's
Yeah, it's got
a
a nice
great
finish.
wine, I think.
Okay, I absolutely. Well, there are a couple things I love about this meeting. First of all, it's so, you went to UC Davis, you have a degree in fermentation science, I believe.
Yes. Yes.
And you've got the winemaking background, you have experience in packaging, and you have experience in the business of wine. So you're a,
I'm
you're a very
seasoned.
well-rounded
I'm seasoned.
person.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and yeah, the wine industry is complicated. So
Yeah.
it's really very, very advantageous to have someone who understands the winemaking process, even when you're dealing with cost of goods and things like that. And
Cost of goods and,
Oh my
and other
gosh.
things for a general manager. But no, I was fortunate. I graduated in the early 80s, and my first full-time job of my life was assistant winemaker at Schramsberg Vineyards in the Napa Valley.
Oh,
And that
wow,
got
I
me on my
didn't know
bubbly.
that.
One of
That
the
got me on my
best.
bubbly. Yeah, no,
One of the
and it
best.
came at a good time. Sparkling wine was just starting to take off.
did you have an
And-
interest in sparkling
No,
prior to your...
I had wild hairs. I could have done anything. And I was fortunate that Greg Fowler and Jack Davies saw something in me and hired me. And so I just kind of rolled with the flow after that. So, in my career, yes, I've got a fair amount of sparkling. And then, which led to Mumm Napa, and then exposure to large corporations and exposure to operations and finance and everything, all aspects of the business. Which
Well,
is,
it's just
yeah,
good for the winery to have someone who understands all the moving parts going on.
yeah,
so-
no, it's good, and that's what I try to do. I just try to fit in. You know, we have a really nice team at Foppiano.
Pretty
Paul,
new team. No, Paul has been there
No,
for
Paul's been
all his life, right?
Yeah, all his life, and he's got the Foppiano family DNA. He manages the vineyard. He's part of the board, whom I report to.
Yeah.
And then Nova is a great winemaker. He's been with us since 2015, and and many people think the wines are as good as they've ever been.
Oh, they're
And
delicious.
you
Yeah,
can, as you're
they-
tasting, and then I don't know. We're 11 of us. There are only 11 of us, and we have 120 acres of grapes. We have
There are
a
11
winery.
employees?
That's it, total.
Does that include
And we have
tasting room staff?
and that includes taste.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
that's
full
pretty
time, full time.
crazy.
Yeah, but we've got experience, and everybody works pretty hard.
How many
yeah.
cases do you produce?
Well, our brand is a good 10,000 cases, but our winery, having been built in various times going back to like 1915 and in the late 30s and the 60s and 70s, we have a fairly large winery, and we fill it up because we do work for winemaker colleagues of ours who want wine made for them, and so we do a lot.
I was
Yeah.
sad to see your scale go away.
Oh, that scale in the front.
I used to
yes.
Scale,
spend
yeah.
so much time weighing at that scale.
And how
Yeah.
about those
In
big
my 20 years.
redwood tanks?
We have one redwood tank
Left?
and it's outside the winery for show.
I mean, they
Yeah.
were huge.
Yeah, yeah.
And probably they had a coating of about 3 inches thick, since
No,
they had been installed in 1870s.
There's a lot of history in Foppiano
Yeah.
that's so
Oh, the
rich.
history is fabulous.
And-
We need to talk about the history.
yeah.
Let's talk about the dad, the grand.
Well,
it started at he bought the land in
Paul Foppiano is 5th generation, and his daughter Gianna is 6th.
Okay, here's
And
some photos.
we've got
That's
some
the family.
pictures too. Yes. So the picture in the upper left-hand corner is, I believe, of the first harvest after Prohibition. And we've been making wine there since 1896, and we made wine before, during, and after Prohibition. In fact, if you come to our winery, we have this great picture that
yes.
shows us being our winery being drained by federal
Yes,
agents.
Oh,
I
yeah,
remember
And,
that.
and
yes.
this is a picture
Yeah.
of 2nd generation Louis Foppiano. He's in the middle. And then Louis J. Foppiano is the little boy on the right. And he lived till he was 101 years old, and he really was the most notable person in our history. So his father died middle-aged, and L.J. Foppiano, Louis J., who's right there standing next to the truck.
Yeah, okay.
he ran the winery in the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s. He was one of the main sponsors to get Russian River an approved AVA with the BATF. He was one of the founding guys of the Wine Institute, and you know, he was best friends with August Sebastiani. He's one of the front runners as far as bottling their own brand with the Foppiano label. We were one of the first to ever put Petite Syrah on a label.
That's
in the early
right.
60s, there he is again.
Oh, that's a great photo.
And so he passed away, I want to say in 2010. 2000, hold on a sec.
Older.
No.
Later.
2011.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah, I had the honor
so
of
he's
meeting
third
him.
generation, and there's a picture of Louis in the middle,
Yeah.
and then his two sons, Rod on the left, who's Paul Foppiano's father, and then Louis Foppiano, Louis Jr. on the right.
On the right, yeah. Oh.
So Rod Foppiano, he passed away. There's Louis, so that's fourth generation.
Oh, yes.
But
Oh,
Rod
Lou.
passed away, Paul's
Good ol'
father, at a young age to leukemia, unfortunately. And so Louis took the reins, and there's Paul, fifth generation, and his daughter Gianna. Now that picture was taken probably about 8 or 9 years ago. So Gianna now is in junior high school, and there's Paul, who, as I said earlier, is our president and vineyard manager. So
Yeah, I remember meeting Louis, the junior, at UC Davis Wine Executive Program. We were sponsoring
Okay,
it.
cool.
And I go there and say, I better go since we're paying for it, might as well. So I sit down, and Louis was right next to me.
Yeah.
And I said, what are you doing here? You've been in the wine business for 100 years. So you sort of never, you never know enough and stuff
yeah, you
like that.
can always learn something else.
And he loves woodwork too,
Yeah,
right?
okay,
Isn't he all
yeah.
about that?
So Louis Foppiano, fourth generation, he's our chairman, and he's on the board. And he's retired, but he checks in. But basically, the management team is Paul, myself, Nova, the winemaker, and we have Heidi in finance, and we're going for it.
And one more note, and then I'll shut up.
Oh,
No,
no, we
no.
want you to.
But I remember
you're here to analyze.
going to the winery, and so probably in 2010 or 9, and I go there, and I say, oh, you should go and see the dad, the old man. He's like almost 100 years old. What is he doing here? He should be in bed. Oh, no, he's signing bottles.
Nice.
And his penmanship, superb. At 100 years old, I mean, I can't barely write anymore at my age. His penmanship is beautiful. So if you see any of the bottles are signed by him, that's
We do have a
something
couple
else.
bottles in our showcase.
Is that-
If you come to our visitor center, we have labels dating back to I think, what's the earliest one? Late 30s. And you can see just all the different designs, and there's a few signed bottles. There's a
Yeah.
lot of historical photos. We're an old school winery, and you don't have to make an appointment. You can just come in. You can bring food. We have picnic tables.
Are you
and
pet friendly?
we're pet friendly. We're kid friendly.
yes.
We're dog friendly. I mean, we're historical winery, and it's nice in that respect.
Yeah,
I,
very
um,
respected.
I
also.
oh good. Here's
Oh, here
some.
it is, yeah.
That's so beautiful.
So what are
Yeah.
grapes? What are these?
So this is a looking west. The trees
Yeah.
out there behind the trees are the Russian River,
Russian, okay.
and those are some young vines there. So as I said earlier, we have a good 120 acres planted, and primarily to Pinot Noir and Petite Syrah, and but we also have Zinfandel, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, and Carignan. In fact, we'll taste the Carignan
I've had
pretty
the,
quickly.
I've had the pleasure of tasting that, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So
Is it Carignan
Well,
time?
but
I
we
have
can always
to-
position
I
it.
have to bring this up because it's fascinating. I know everybody's curious. So you really did. It's not just legend. You really did get busted by the feds during Prohibition.
Yeah,
and
in
you really
1926.
did. And
There's
from what
we
I
have
understand,
picture proof.
and
Right in the
I
middle.
need to see that. But it's when the river ran red
Yes.
Yeah,
And
and there's a
people
book, and there's
were-
a chapter on that episode.
Oh, my
And so this
gosh.
picture is a great one because you see the Fed guy, and he's got his hat and a little
Like
you know, jacket.
Elliot Ness
And there's
looking
another
guy.
one too that's trying to hide out of the picture. And then you got some locals that are just drinking. And across the ditch, this is right in front of the winery. You got a couple guys passed out. And then you got
Oh my
Louis Foppiano
gosh.
when he was 16 years old, and he's just kind of got this glum look because there's about 100,000 gallons of red wine
Oh, yeah.
that are being
And
that's being thrown
supposedly-
out. And that's a lot of money
I heard-
in the late 20s.
I heard people were running to the river with jugs, filling them up.
I think that happened.
It wouldn't surprise me if Prohibition hit Healdsburg. Healdsburgians would definitely
Yeah.
be by the river
Oh, yes.
with
So
jugs,
we'd be drinking.
drinking from the river. I might be one of them actually, but it's not a great story. It's just fascinating.
Sure.
Truly.
No, it's fun. No, the history's fun, and we've got that.
Is that in your visitor center?
It's in the tasting room, and so yeah,
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's
and
pretty
then
big. Yeah, it's a big photograph.
yeah.
Yeah.
and then after Prohibition,
After
it was business
Prohibition,
as usual.
it's business as usual. That's when we expanded the winery. In fact, we have this wall that holds 200,000 gallons of wine, and they're a series of 5 cement tanks that were built in the late 30s, and we started bottling. Foppiano at one point had a couple of train cars, and we had a pipe that went underneath the old Redwood Highway to these train tracks, and they would fill up tanker cars of wine that would then go out east to get bottled back east. Just open up the pipe and fill up.
So you're on the train.
Wow.
You were along the train track.
We were along the train
obviously.
track.
Sort of like Simi is.
And what made that work too was
Thank you.
the fact that these red blends. This is pre, Petit Syrah varietal, but we would have the red Burgundy per se. But we had a lot of Petit Syrah in the blends. And what's cool about Petit Syrah, and we'll talk more about it, but while I'm on this digression here, is even though we have Carignan right here, but Petit Syrah can absorb a lot of oxygen. It can absorb oxygen every bit as good as Cabernet, if not a little bit better, and just absorb it without it changing. So
You're saying it can absorb oxygen without getting oxidized?
it will eventually, but it can withstand.
Oh, I see
It
what
can
you
It's
mean.
withstand
the
a lot of
opposite. It's the opposite of
aeration.
Pinot Noir, which is a delicate red.
Yeah.
So this is one of the hardy, or the Petit Syrah is one of the hardiest reds that you can have.
Well, and you were the first winery to ever put Petit Syrah on a label.
In 1964, yes.
That's amazing.
So
Which we'll do after that, right?
yes,
That's
yes.
the bar.
But if you have these red wine blends getting pumped into tanker cars, that's how I got on this digression. And the majority of that blend is Petit Syrah. That's why it worked, because we weren't putting argon gas in.
yeah.
So it could
in
handle the
tanker cars
journey,
back
huh?
then, So it could handle the ride and be good wine back.
Now,
back.
where did the Petit Syrah cuttings originally come from?
Well, that's a good question.
Or where is Petit
I think they
Syrah
come
from?
No. Okay, so the Petit Syrah, when the Foppiano family bought the ranch in 1896, it was already an active vineyard, and there was a barn making wine. And I can't tell you who the family, who they were, but I think it was called Riverside Farms. But there was Petit Syrah planted on the ranch, and Zinfandel, little Carignan, back in the late 1800s.
Oh, little field
so we've
blend.
always had Petit Syrah. So I'm sure there's been cuttings, etc.
Well, and
But I
just
think in the Rhone Valley, there's a grape called Durif, and that's Petit Syrah. And
Because-
it's been there for a
because
couple
Petit-
hundred years. And then I don't know when it came here. I don't know if it was.
It came to California in the late 1880s.
Late 1880s.
I think Professor Durif in France,
Yes.
who made Petit Syrah in the early 1880s. He took the pollen of Syrah and put it on a pretty much obscure mountain grape called Peloursin. Peloursin. How do you pronounce that in
Oui,
French?
Peloursin, yeah.
Peloursin.
No, you sound just like a French
I speak
person.
French all of a sudden.
from
Just
Spain.
give me some wine now. No, so that's what made Petit Syrah. But let's go back to Carignan.
And
Yes.
Petit,
Yeah,
and
'cause we'll get
Petit
back-
Syrah is a different grape than Syrah. People tend to ask that quite a bit.
The
in
berries are
tasting
smaller,
room.
hence the name Petit Syrah. I don't know why. the Syrah was changed to S-I-R-A-H versus S-Y-R-A-H for Syrah. But anyway, it's the berries came out
It came
smaller
from
than
Syria,
the Syrah.
I think that's what the...
Oh, now he's making stuff up over there. I'm not yes, you are.
It's a Carignan.
Let's not carry
Yeah.
Okay,
on.
we'll
We'll get in
we'll
trouble.
make a last comment about Petit Syrah,
yeah,
then
yeah.
we'll move
We'll
on to
get back to
Carignan, which is
Carignan.
that you are, didn't you start the Petit Syrah Society, the
The P.S. I Love You
It's
Society.
P.S. I love you. How cute is that?
Hey,
Very
I
cool.
don't know what the starting date was, but at least early 90s, maybe late 80s. But yeah, sure. Foppiano was a founding member of that and one of the key starters. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Well, it's a neat varietal, and one thing about your Petit Syrah, just to finish up with, you it is definitely used as a blending grape, but yours is it seems to have more complexity. You know, the source of the vineyards is such that it is a fabulous finished wine.
we are in a good spot for Petit Syrah. Northern tip of the Russian River Valley. It's dry. Petit Syrah has tight, compact clusters, and it's prone to not do well in harvests where you have moisture.
Yeah, it falls
so
apart, that's true,
It does. It
quickly.
falls apart. But where we're located, there's some width, and if there is, the low or the overcast in the morning that burns off at 10 or 11, it's burning off at 10 or 11 and not hanging out till 2 in the afternoon, that you can get in other pockets in the south of us in the Russian River Valley. So
Yeah.
it works. And also, too, the soil, I looked at a soil map of our main vineyard in back of the winery, and somebody back in the 1800s walked the soil and figured out this gravelly loam type of soil. And
So the vineyard follows the soil line?
yeah, it does.
That's
And it's
really
really cool. And
interesting.
it's just one pocket of it. There's a little blip of it just down the road from us. But then, to the east and to the north and just to the south, the soil changes. So, and it works. Yeah. It's kind of cool to think that, back in the 1800s, somebody's just kind of walking the dirt, and just figuring it
Well,
out. Yeah.
it's always surprising to me how well planned vineyards are. They're not as random as people
Yeah.
think they are.
Yeah.
I mean, they,
Sure.
but yeah, your Petit Syrah is exceptional. That's
a
interesting
good
about
one. That's a good one.
Well, the people that came early in the 1800s, and they were already probably planting vines in their own country before they
Yeah.
came. Right? They were
Yeah.
pros already. They
Yeah.
were not like amateurs.
Are you talking about
No,
the French?
The French and the
Yeah,
Italians.
not like the French people. They were real amateurs.
Yeah, are you bragging about France again?
Let's talk
Carignan.
Carignan.
Okay.
Carignan.
So this is a fun little wine that
This
we
is
make.
delicious.
We make a couple hundred cases a year, and we've been growing it on the ranch for 100 years or so, or more. And in 2012, we decided to let's just take a couple barrels and bottle 50 cases, and we have this nice little following. And it's a grape that was much more widely planted in California in the olden days.
I know.
Um,
It's hard to
Carignan.
find. I would love to make some. I can't find it.
Oh, okay.
Unless,
Well, we get about 8 to 10 tons a year. Yeah. But so anyway, this is from our estate, and it's a late ripening grape. It's got thicker skins than most grapes, so it's kind of like Cabernet in that sense. The clusters are a little bit on the loose side, and it's one of the last grapes that we harvest. And so this is a late October play for us.
it's very
mid to late October.
It's spicy.
It's got a little spice. It's got, our Carignan at times, we get this little subtle dried, like oregano,
Oh, yeah.
thyme kind of touch to it, which is
Yeah, I
a
was
lot of
almost
fun.
thinking eucalyptus, but it's not eucalyptus, so it must be.
That's more minty. But
Yeah,
think,
more minty,
think of the
yeah.
thyme, oregano.
I mean, that's major perfume.
It's fun,
and
and it's,
beautiful.
just, it's cool because it's something different besides, the main Merlots and Cabs and everything else that we drink, and we did make a small amount of it. I think it's, I know that You know, I open it up at home when I'm doing baby back ribs on the grill, and
Okay,
it's like
yeah, I was
great.
going to ask, what do you eat
Oh,
with
it's
that?
wonderful. It's just
Actually,
you
this
know,
would
just
work for
pop a bottle.
Thanksgiving too. I swear, it's
it would
delicious.
be good. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
very good.
You only
See, our
bought one
cameraman
bottle,
wants
though,
to
We only
try
bought-
it.
Yeah. So we have the white label and the black label. The black label is our class of wines that you have to come to the visitor center to buy, or just come on by, which will
Well-
be easy for you, Susie.
Oh yeah,
you're
I'm,
right
I'm
here.
just around the corner. What I really love,
too,
so
Jacques.
people sometimes don't know how to read back labels, but one thing that will always be on a Foppiano bottle is grown, produced, and bottled. So you grow you grow everything.
It's estate bottled, and estate, correct me if I'm wrong, needs to be
95.
5%, at least 95%.
95 is-
It
okay,
might
yeah.
even be, I wanted to say even 98 or something. That's
I-
a strict,
No,
it's
it's
a strict
a
one.
5.
It's
It's a
95.
95%,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. 95%.
And
So,
is this 100%?
This is 100%.
Carignan?
Carignan, yes.
How come the Italians say Carignan sometimes?
Carignan.
Carignan.
The grape is still widely planted in France, and
Oh, yes.
but Spain,
Yes.
big time
But
Spain.
Spain, yes.
Spain,
Or
and
it's spelled
yeah.
with an E at the end.
Yeah.
Okay,
Carignani.
And as I say, it was a big grape in California for a number of years in the olden days, but the Cabernet and Merlot, and rightfully so, is
And
transplanted a few
What's
of
the
these.
alcohol on this? What is it, like
This-
14.5?
Yeah, this is going to be a 14.5er.
And
Yeah.
it's just perfectly balanced.
It's really good.
And a single varietal. I mean, that's wow.
I
know we
agree.
had it
Nova
like
does
2
a
or 3
great job
weeks
on this.
ago, because
Because
you brought a
it's-
bottle.
Well, so my personal experience with this varietal is that all of a sudden the vineyard stops producing, like the yields go down, and so every Carignan vineyard that they took out, it's because the yields got lower and lower, and it just wasn't cost effective. But that's just my own. That's just what I've seen.
Foppiano, everything about us and to appreciate is antique. And when you come to the tasting room and they see the winery, I mean, the winery dates, as I mentioned earlier, it goes back to a fermentation room. There's a section that goes back to like 1915. And we have 100-year-old fig trees, and that's ripened now, and yeah. But where is I going with this? So our vineyard, that's why we have 1971 Sauvignon Blanc vines. We have 1971 Petit Syrah vines, which go into the Giannis block that we're going to taste next. Yes, our yields are down, but we've been around for a long time, and it just works.
Oh no, it's
So, as I say,
well, and a lot of
yeah.
people think lower yields translates into higher quality.
And it does. But we have a business to run, and we're making it work. And in fact, the last 6 or 7 years have been, pretty exciting in that, the fifth generation with Paul, is really kind of taking charge. It's the time of the fourth to the fifth generation transition, and we've been fixing up the winery inside and out, investing in the vineyards. We've remodeled the tasting room. We put a nice tasting room deck on the outside.
I love your big sign.
Yeah.
It's classic.
Yeah, you changed the.
There's a big sign on the side of the
signage.
building. It's
Yeah,
wonderful.
Yes, we remodeled.
Yeah.
We remodeled the front, and in fact, it's a retro look. So it's pretty much the same font as the Sauvignon Blanc, but it says El Foppiano Wine Company on the front,
Yeah.
which is what it looked like in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s.
Yeah.
So it's fun, and so we think it's inviting, to just come in, and as I say, we're an easy place to visit because you don't have to make reservations. You have to be a club member to even make a reservation that some wineries have, and you can just pull in and just taste and relax with fair pricing for the quality. Yeah.
Did you have a program where you could refill your?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We do. We
Right?
have jugs. We've got
We
the
do have
growlers.
jugs.
Yeah.
The growlers,
Yeah. 'Cause
yeah.
we have a product called Lot 96, and 96 because we were founded in 1896, and people return their growlers, and we just like a beer, and
Yeah, you don't have to go into the river for it. Right? It's perfect.
No, it's great. It's a really good deal too. I mean, it's great. So we have locals that come weekly and just get the red jug filled
I need
up.
to try that. I need to try your jug wine. It's such
I
a great
just
idea.
found this bottle here.
I know.
Hey, it's Petit
Is that
Syrah.
all?
I was
Let's
getting
talk
thirsty
about
for
Yeah,
Petit
it.
I
Syrah,
know,
'cause
and,
we
and
haven't talked
I
about it.
kept harping on Petit Syrah because I forgot that we
You're
actually
excited
had a
about it.
bottle.
You're excited about
We
it.
don't
Yeah,
need,
yeah, yeah.
we're
no, we don't
trying
need
to.
to taste it. I'm sorry.
do.
Okay, that's my mistake.
Okay, so down your Carignan
We
here.
have nothing
Yeah.
else to talk about. Petit Syrah. I'm just joking. So will all of your labels look like the Sauvignon Blanc label as
yes,
you
yes.
transition?
And we've got the Sauvignon Blanc and the Chardonnay labels are out with the new format, and then behind that will be the the reds, and even our reserve labels will have the same font. It'll still be a black label. It's really they're beautiful. So last year we as I say, there's a lot of excitement over the last 5 or 6 years. Last year, we started a new partnership with Quintessential Wines, who's our national distributor, marketer, and PR company, and we collaborated with them and we designed the new labels. And I think it's a good thing.
It's a really,
yeah.
it's sort of a masculine label. I like that. It's just,
And you can read it, and it's
yeah, you
I
can
don't
read
know,
it. That's
it's-
always a bonus.
It's not
For
ostentatious
some
or
of us,
anything.
it's a good thing that the big letters.
Oh yeah, I know. I know. Reading vintages
Oh my
as
gosh,
you
I
age.
know.
I know.
Let me pass this down. That looks,
Okay.
okay, sorry, I harped on Petit Syrah. but
No,
I'm very
we can
excited
talk more about it. I love Petit Syrah. And we have a library of Petit Syrah wines. I think we've got some 70s, and there are wines that are still alive. There's a wine, it's like the 83 vintage, and we have an 81 that's still alive that you can drink. And think how old that is. And again, that just proves, so, not only can Petit Syrah, with its ability to absorb oxygen, withstand a lot of, ruckus when you're making it or transporting it, but it ages in the cellar for years and years and years
It
because
really
of that ability.
does. It does. It's crazy how long it lasts in barrels. I didn't know about the oxidation.
Yeah, no, it does.
Interesting.
And you can.
Is there some physical reason for that, or is it just something you've experienced?
It's the makeup of the anthocyanins and other compounds that.
Wait, slow down. I didn't go to Davis.
No, no. So there's a gentleman. There's a gentleman winemaker, Clark Smith, and he's written a book. So
yes,
I
of
went to
course.
school with Clark, and he's more professorial than I was. He sat in the front row, being super smart, and I was more kind of the back row in the lecture halls. But anyway, so he's a buddy, and
Very smart man.
oh yeah, and he has been measuring. He has technology where he can measure oxygen absorption and figure all this out and quantify the Petit Syrah's ability and compare it to Cab and Pinot and Merlot. And so, we've been, speaking with him, and we've had tastings. We'll taste our library wines, and right after I've tasted, we've shot the wines down to his place, his little lab in Santa Rosa, and he's measuring these, 1983s and 1990s, and he still finds some ability to absorb oxygen, and gets pretty excited about it.
Wow.
And he's written a couple nice little papers on Petit Syrah too. That's fun to look up.
I love how he's very passionate about the science of
yeah.
it, which is a cool thing to see.
He would have been a good professor.
Oh, yeah.
But he's actually done a lot of different things, and he's got a piece of him that has been professor-like. So it's I respect that. It's pretty cool.
Are you in touch, just out of curiosity, are you in touch with a lot of people you went to Davis with? Because you're sort of in that era of winemakers that were, you're in sort of the famous era of winemaking.
I don't know, famous or infamous, but
Yeah.
no, I graduated at a good time. I was a pre-med, undeclared student, and got a letter from the dean after 100 units. Hey, McNeill, you got to do something,
Declare
And
it.
then it was like, well, let's see, pre-med. I could go physiology and dissect animals, or you mean wine wine tasting.
Drink wine.
So my maturity level at the time was more apt for that. you
Was
know.
there fermentation science
It was
program
fermentation science.
new?
So no, it had started it started earlier. Maynard Amarin started it, I think. Oh gosh, even before him. I mean, no, Davis had a viticulture and winemaking program that's goes back tens of years. You know, I want to say Berkeley. It started in Berkeley, you know, pre-Prohibition, and then Davis eventually took it over. But I got in when the wine industry was about to expand. So I'm an early '80s graduate, and so when I graduated. Coming out of Davis, we had assistant winemaker jobs to jump into. And it quickly changed. And you know, when I graduated, there were about maybe 25 people in our class. And then, you know, 4 or 5 years later, it was 50 people. And so graduates 5, 6, 7 years after I graduated, there was another layer. The industry was expanding, wineries were getting bigger, but you'd come in and you'd run a lab before you go to assistant winemaker, before you go to winemaker. In the 70s, it was more golden. So if you graduated from Davis in the mid-70s, you could walk right into a winemaking position and be mentored by, you know, Nightingale, Dr.
Chili
Peterson,
Chef.
or Andrei Chelichev, right?
Wow.
And so I was the first wave of assistant winemakers. I was in that. And, you know, it was one of the best decisions I ever made, honestly. It was, and I'm very fortunate to have had
Were your
the
parents,
opportunities that I've
were your
had.
parents disappointed you didn't choose
No.
medical school?
So my father, so he was an ear, nose, and throat doctor. He was relieved in a way, yeah, because, you know, doctors, being a doctor, and your father's a doctor too,
Yes,
right?
yes.
I mean, it's hard.
It is
and
hard.
But my grandmother, so my dad's mom, she was this great gal from South Carolina, and both her sons were ENTs. And I remember going down to visit her, saying, "Gima, I'm going to be a winemaker." And she's like, "What? Robbie, you're going to be a winemaker?" She goes, "That's vulgar." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You guys taste wine and all you do is spit." And I had just made the decision. I didn't even know about spitting then, you know. I was just like, I think I'm going to be tasting and drinking a little bit, you know. So anyway, it's cute. But so I got the job with Schramsberg, and I would just show up at her house and with a bottle of Schramsberg and have dinner with her, and we were happy. That was just a small moment in time when she was a little disappointed, but it was cool.
Now, how old were you when you started appreciating wine? Just curious. I mean, I started at a very young age. I'm just
Well, you know
wondering.
what? Being brought up for Thanksgiving, when the family would get together, we'd be allowed to drink wine.
Yeah.
And you know, we weren't drinking, you know, white Bordeaux. It was Chablis, you know, and as a kid. But so that's my first exposure to wine. I didn't come from a winemaking family, but yeah.
I love how you
drank
say
out
that. It was Chablis, like, yeah, we were, you know, our poor household, we couldn't have white Bordeaux.
No.
We had to have Chablis.
Well, I didn't even know it. Yeah, I don't know. It's just,
The fact you even know what it is says everything.
well, I've learned a lot since I've been in the wine industry. I learned a lot about food too, you know.
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah. I'm interested because you're primarily a winemaker, and now you're a general manager. You're not the winemaker, at least
Which is
on
okay.
paper.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, but so how do you balance that? I mean, you seem that
You
you
know,
want to
I've always,
tweak everything
no,
behind.
no. You know, I've
No?
always been somebody that's just kind of gone with the flow. And so when I was at Mumm Napa, and I was the director of winemaking there, and about halfway through my 15 years there, it was a promotion, and I got promoted by a gentleman named Tom Hobart, who's
What
no
a
longer with us,
great
right?
guy.
But he came up to me.
He was C. Claude Dubois
Yeah.
winemaker,
Yeah,
director
he
of
founded
winemaking.
Not the Hobart.
Claude Dubois, right?
the
Yeah.
kitchen
So he came up to
equipment.
me and he promoted me to general manager at Mumm Napa. And he goes, "Rob, I'm promoting you out of the spotlight." And I'm like, okay. I mean, that's what I wanted. And so that's the beginning of my management career. And then I needed to hire a winemaker. And then I brought Ludovic.
Ludovic Dervin was a friend of ours.
Yeah, oui, yeah. And so I brought him and he worked for me at Piper Sonoma, you know, prior to Mumm Napa. And so,
That's so
it-
interesting.
anyway, so then that's when my management thing started. So I've just, learned to appreciate operations in other aspects. And I remember then Allied Domec buying Mumm Napa, and my job changed again. I became in charge of 3 wineries in Napa Valley, and it was Atlas Peak, William Hill, and Mumm Napa. And my job became 3/4 operations and 1/4 winemaking, and that was a big change. But I remember kind of interviewing with the new COO that was coming in, and he's like, "So Rob, what's your aspiration, in year to year at Mumm Napa?" I'm like, "I just want to make the greatest wine ever. The next vintage comes out. I just want it to be better than I've ever made before." And he was an operations guy, and he goes, "I just want to go home at night, and I want to sleep well and know that everything's running." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's cool, Jim."
Sounds
And I
good for
respected
that.
that. But then I just remember that conversation, like, a handful of years later. And it's like, if somebody asked me that same question, it would be, yes, I want to make the best wine ever, but I also want that plant to run as smooth as ever. And I think that's really, what you want. And for a GM too, then that, sure, you have budgets and finance and things, but you want the business to run as good as ever and smart, making good, wholesome decisions with the team, so.
Do you remember David Lose? Alcohol,
Dave
tobacco, and
Lose.
firearms.
Oh, yeah.
I had lunch today with David Lose, and he was talking about a good general manager.
He's a skier. He's an old-time skier too.
He's a skier. He and his wife and his family, they're very, very close
I haven't
friends
seen
of
Dave
mine.
for 7 or 8 years.
Well, Dave wanted me to tell you hello.
Oh, good.
But Dave also said that a great general manager hires good people and lets them do their job, and
Yes.
that's what you do.
That's
I
what I
mean,
do.
and that
yeah.
he said that's the perfect situation. Find outstanding people and let them do their jobs. And it sounds like
And we have a good team. That's why we can
Yeah.
do what we do with 11 people at Foppiano. So,
Now I'm going to just for fun mention my favorite T-shirt of all time is David Lose's. So he used to work for Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which
Right.
of course is now TTB.
TTB, right.
But he had this T-shirt that said Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Underneath it said, "Who's bringing the chips?"
I like him.
My favorite
He
T-shirt.
retired a long time ago, but he's always been that
did.
go-to consultant, And
Well, and he's always
Yeah.
been he's always been a great advocate of the wine industry, even
Yeah.
as a enforcement
gosh,
person.
yeah.
But yes, he said hello.
reciprocate and tell him I said hello too. 'cause
Well,
it'd
maybe
be
he's
fun.
watching.
Yeah, Dave, come by Foppiano.
Dave, he's such a great guy.
Yeah.
And those of us who've been around when alcohol, tobacco, and firearms was even a deal are the old timers in the industry.
Yeah.
That was a big
BATF.
force in our industry. But of course, you're now working for someone who got busted by the feds. So
The wine industry's gotten pretty complex when it comes to, your rules and regulations. There's no doubt. If you talk to Louis Foppiano, 4th generation, he'll say, the only thing we ever had to worry about or deal with, not worry, but just, be respectful to, is a better way to say it, is the once a year they would come in, check some inventory, and that was it. And now,
Well,
there's just so much.
remember they'd come in, so if ATF would show up and they'd choose a bottle of wine and say, tell us, can you trace this bottle of wine back to where, we still do that. We keep records like that. But it was you really, because it's alcohol and there are taxes involved,
Sure.
the record keeping,
Taxes involved. So you want to make sure that everything's
yeah.
accounted for, yeah?
but you do have a very, very large job. I admire what you do.
Thank you.
No, that's
Oh.
big, and you're obviously doing a good job at it.
We're all working hard.
And what's the next improvement there, if any?
The next improvement, I don't know. We're as I say, we have this partnership with Quintessential Wines. They're out of Napa, and they're a good group, hardworking, similar DNA, I think. And so we're working on the wholesale, which is a challenge for small wineries, as we all know. As the distributors have contracted and larger companies have gotten larger, our industry has matured. So, but we're working on that. We have a new label. We have a good team of folks who are rooting for us and that we're getting synergy with, right? We're working on investing in our vineyards. We have an old vineyard. We've got 11 acres of Pinot Noir that we planted a couple years ago. That'll start coming on. We got an acre of Viognier. We planted a couple of acres of Barbera. I mean, we're we're doing some things like that, some fun things. We even have a couple hundred vines of a rosé Chardonnay, which is a
Right. So
Of
what's the
what?
red?
it's a variety that's been around for a long time in Europe, and we got some cuttings. We got some.
I've never heard of that.
No, it's a rosé Chardonnay clone.
Rosé
So it's a
Chardonnay. Have
Chardonnay.
you heard of this?
It's a Chardonnay that actually
gonna
has
look this
some
up.
pigment. You look that up, Dan. But
Hello, marketeer.
Is it like Roussanne, where it has
Well, the skin
like
is
that?
a little bit reddish.
Yeah.
yeah,
Dots.
exactly,
Okay,
exactly,
got it. Okay.
exactly.
Wow, how interesting.
Well,
So
there's
we
some of
planted
the
that,
Jura
but
mountains
we
that
need
have
another
that.
year or two. But
Have you ever worked with that varietal before?
no, nobody has in California.
Nobody
I don't
has.
think. I think we're going to be
Nobody's heard
the.
of it.
We're going to be one of the first. I think we're going to be the first
So
winery,
now's the
honestly,
time
that's
to
going to have.
join your wine club, because this will be a wine club wine, won't it?
It will be.
I would
Now's the
assume.
time to get it so you can get the sparkling wine. Actually, yeah.
That 124 cases.
Of the sparkling
Sparkling
Pinot, but we
Pinot.
have 100 cases of rosé for the New Year's, and then we've got about 80 cases of a Blanc de Blanc that's going to get about 4 years on the yeast. That had some really nice barrel fermentation. It's going to be cool, and that's going to
Wow.
be a couple of years from now.
Rosé Chardonnay.
Yeah, I know. I'll tune you into that. You come by the
We
winery, I'll
had
show you.
all of it.
Oh, look, our cameraman.
Oh, there you go.
Our
there's
cameraman
the
who was
grapes.
reaching
yeah,
for
yeah.
wine earlier has
Yeah,
now
yeah.
found it on his phone.
Geisenheim in Germany kept it going, and Duarte Nursery
Duarte,
had the vines, and my buddy Stefan, Stefan Daniels.
Uh-huh.
So Stefan just said, "Hey, Rob, we've got a couple hundred vines.
Okay,
You want
here
it?"
we go.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Marsanais.
See, okay.
So Marsanais is
Don't I-
Burgundy.
Char-
Chardonnay rosé though.
Yeah, so Marsanais, but Marsanais is in Burgundy.
Yeah. But I can show you. I can show you an old. Who's the Gallet? Who's the old French
Good job, Rob.
viticultural guy? Yeah. No, I've got a
Billy
book.
Bob?
I'll show you the book. The book. So it goes back.
But it's obviously a Marsanne, which is only white. It's the only white grape I've ever seen that has a red skin. So
Well,
if it's
we'll see.
Marsanne
Yeah, but we'll see.
Marsanais
We'll see.
is in Burgundy. It's not Marsanne. Marsanais is a
It's in the
town.
Rhone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So this
But there is
so I don't know.
there's a rosé version of Chardonnay that's been in Europe for a long time.
Huh. Well, this will be fun. We'll have to have you back in a year.
Yeah, we can't wait to taste it.
So when is it going to actually
You,
start?
you know what? Our first little baby crop will be next year, and then a couple hundred vines. We'll just be making a couple barrels of it, and so we'll probably make a rosé Chardonnay, still wine.
tuned.
But I'm like, I want to make sparkling with it, But no, but then I'd have to extract skin stuff, and it's just a rosé. So I think it's going to be a really cool little tasting room, still wine.
Do you plant Pinot Meunier, just out of curiosity?
Pinot Meunier, we don't have.
Okay,
that.
so I was just curious
But
about
but that is the third Champagne grape, and at one point it was the most widely planted grape in Champagne. It's just a couple percent more than Pinot or Chardonnay, but no, we don't have any Pinot Meunier on the ranch. There's just a small amount of it in California. That
Oh, yeah.
been sponsored by Mumm Napa,
Mm-hmm.
Piper Sonoma back in the day. Got a couple growers to grow it for them. Domaine Carnero's had some. It's a cool grape.
Yeah,
an old
it's a
grape.
very
Yeah,
cool
yeah,
grape.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's fun that you're bringing in the sparkling culture.
Yeah. It's just something else that we can do. It gets us going in August. I mean, this year's harvest. We're making a little sparkling wine cuvee this year, and the last few weeks have been interesting when the grapes have come in. But it's okay.
Well, what project are you most excited about with 2020 vintage?
The project I'm most excited about with 2020 vintage. I don't know if there's a specific project, but I just, I am looking forward to the Vermentino and the Barbera and the Chardonnay Rosé, the Rosé Chardonnay, but that's next year. This vintage is just, I don't know, man. I think it's just,
It's going to be a good vintage.
20. Yeah, it's going to be a good vintage. It's 2020, which has been a pretty interesting year. So,
Yes, it
I
has, and
think
we're all adjusting
I
to
think our
2020.
primary concern is to do it in a healthy way, in a smart way. The growing season was cool, and the crop is on the lighter side, so that tends to make good flavors and good
yeah.
quality. And so it's a challenge, and it's just, I guess it's meeting the challenge that this year's vintage presents itself, and that's the goal. And it's not going to be easy because of recent weather events. We've got this
Yeah.
health issue out there that we're being very careful
Well,
about,
still
right?
yes, but it will be. Well, it's very. I think Foppiano is very fortunate to have a person with all of your experiences running the show.
And we
That's
do,
fabulous.
and we do have a resilient family too that owns us. Because think about this, Foppianos, they've been around since the late 1800s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they've gone through a couple world wars. They've gone through the phylloxera of the early 1900s.
That's true.
They went through the Depression.
Prohibition, yeah,
They went
Prohibition.
Prohibition, then the Depression. So
That's
and they're
true.
still
There's
there.
a lot of
'Cause I
resilience.
think we're like, I want to put us at the 4th longest run family run winery in California, in the entire state.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
and your
Yes.
bonded winery number is 312.
Yeah, that's low.
And I'm 6164 because in order, obviously. Right now, I think it's
6164.
in the 20,000s or something crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, 312. Super cool.
No, it is cool. And
It
and
is.
every winery, your winery and ours and others, that we all have our personality, and Foppiano's got a lot of it. And as I say, what to appreciate is just the fact that there's this history, and you just observe the property and you can just see like, wow, there's a super old barn. Look at that fig tree. It's got a trunk this big,
Wow,
And then,
it's fabulous.
and it's relaxing. We're not overly crowded or anything. It's just a relaxing place.
So
Have a
it's-
glass of wine.
So people should definitely stop in
Mm-hmm.
to visit, and they can also go to your website
Yep.
and get. Is this on your website yet? This wonderful.
No, it's not.
Okay, well, it will be eventually.
Good.
So
No.
maybe
Just for us.
maybe the mailing list is a good way.
And we're located just south of Healdsburg. I mean, we are, 5 minutes drive from the Healdsburg Square to the south. So, I mean, very easy to get to. And
Well,
so,
Rob, thank you so much for being here today. Thank
thanks
you,
for having me.
Jacques, our industry analyst.
Industry analyst.
These
Oh, my
wines were
God.
absolutely fabulous,
Beautiful,
and
yes.
I'll be seeing you during harvest for sure.
yeah.
So thank you for coming to the Courtyard, and thank you, Rob. And I'll conclude just by saying, enjoy wine, enjoy life.